Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this. You're staring at your tank glass and you just feel this massive wave of frustration because, honestly, it looks like a fuzzy green science experiment. If that sounds familiar, you are in the exact right place. Look, battling aquarium algae is practically a rite of passage for fish keepers. But the real truth? Even veterans who have been in the hobby for literally a decade still deal with it. It's incredibly common in brand new setups and well-established aquariums alike. Algae spores are just everywhere, and they are highly opportunistic. But today, we're going to break down how to actually build a proper cleanup crew to handle those blooms. We're sticking to facts over fiction here, so you can spend a whole lot less time scrubbing and way more time just enjoying your aquascape.
Okay, let's dive right into this and tackle the single biggest misconception in the hobby. We all want that one magic animal, right? The one we can just drop into the tank that will instantly vacuum up all our problems overnight. It's totally human nature to look for a quick fix, especially when your beautiful aquascape suddenly turns into a literal swamp. But relying on a single fish to magically cure your entire algae outbreak? Yeah, that's a total myth. Buying an animal without understanding its specific dietary needs, how big it gets, or its biological load is just a recipe for absolute disappointment. Adding a fish to a struggling tank often just adds more waste. And ironically, that extra waste feeds the exact algae you're trying to destroy. I want to read this quote directly from our source material because it really anchors everything we're about to discuss. The best algae eaters are the ones that match your water conditions and the kind of algae you're dealing with. Take a second to just let that sink in. There is absolutely no one-size-fits-all solution here. The most effective approach is a holistic rescue plan. You need a finely tuned mix of hardy grazers, specialized invertebrates, and most importantly, basic tank management. Think of your cleanup crew as your maintenance staff. They are great at their jobs, but they cannot overcome terrible working conditions. You've got to provide the right environment first.
To start actually matching animals to your problem, you kind of have to know your enemy, because different types of algae signal entirely different imbalances in your ecosystem. Let's look at these examples. Are you dealing with a film of green dust algae covering your glass? That's incredibly common and usually points straight to a light imbalance, like, say, having your tank lights blazing for 12 hours a day. Or maybe you have brown diatoms building up on your decorations. Experienced keepers know that brown diatoms are notorious in freshly set up tanks, usually fueled by silicates leaching from new sand or glass. Or are you fighting long, stringy hair algae tangled up in your plants? That almost always indicates nutrient spikes and poor water flow. Identifying your specific nuisance growth is absolutely step one.
Section 1. The heavy hitters. Top algae-eating fish. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the Otocinclus, often called the dwarf suckermouth catfish. These guys are small, incredibly peaceful grazers, and they do absolute wonders on film algae and brown diatom buildup. They act like little lawnmowers on your plant leaves, but without damaging the delicate foliage. But there's a massive caveat with otos. They are notoriously delicate during the first few weeks of acclimation. Because they're often wild caught, they can actually struggle and starve if you just drop them into a pristine, brand new tank with no natural food. They really need to be introduced only after a healthy layer of biofilm and soft algae is already established, just to make sure their highly active digestive tracts never run empty. Next up, we have the Bristlenose plecos, or Ancestris. These are super widely recommended because they stay relatively small, topping out around 5 or 6 inches, which is totally different from common plecos that grow to the size of a literal football. Plus, they provide fantastic heavy-duty scraping of soft algae and biofilm on driftwood. But here's an absolutely critical warning. They cannot survive on algae alone. Keepers must provide a balanced diet. That means actively dropping in supplemental sinking foods like specialized algae wafers or even blanched vegetables like zucchini. If you don't feed them intentionally, these hard workers are going to quickly lose weight and perish.
Then there are the true Siamese algae eaters. They are a highly popular choice for controlling really stubborn growths, like black beard algae. But buyer beware. This is exactly where so many aquarists get completely burned. People constantly end up buying the wrong generic fish by mistake because local fish stores frequently mislabel them. You really have to confirm the specific identification and their lip shape. You're looking for the classic Crossochilas black horizontal stripe that extends all the way through the tail fin. Avoid those imposters like flying foxes or the infamous Chinese algae eater. Chinese algae eaters might look kind of similar when they're juveniles, but as they grow, they become highly aggressive, ignore the algae entirely, and will actually latch right onto the slime coats of your other fish. No, thank you. Knowing exactly what you are buying is paramount here.
Let's move to section 2 and see how this builds. The specialist's best return on investment, invertebrates.
Enter the Nerite snail. These guys offer such a predictable cleanup option. They are excellent at taking care of film algae and all sorts of general tank growth, reaching into the absolute tightest corners of your aquarium. Why are they so beloved by advanced aquascapers? Well, they stay small, and crucially, they cannot successfully reproduce in freshwater. Their larvae actually require brackish or saltwater to survive. That means you get a predictable, hardworking crew without worrying that hundreds of snails are going to suddenly overrun your tank. Now, there is a bit of an inside joke in the hobby. They won't overrun your freshwater tank, but they will enthusiastically bedazzle your expensive, carefully placed driftwood with tiny, unhatchable white eggs that look exactly like little sesame seeds. Honestly, it's a small price to pay for spotless glass.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference in ecological niches these animals fill. Just compare the Bristlenose plecos' heavy-duty surface scraping style to something like the vampire shrimp. Vampire shrimp and similar filter-feeding types like bamboo shrimp consume detritus and suspended microorganisms from the water column. They provide a grazing-like cleanup that keeps the water really clear, but they are absolutely not a universal algae solution. Buying a filter feeder to fix a glass algae problem is essentially like buying a vacuum cleaner to wash your windows. It's just the wrong tool for the job. They need high flow and suspended particles, not a static algae-covered rock.
All right, let's do a quick reality check on our specialist invertebrates, like amano shrimp, cleaner shrimp, and snails. Yes, they are incredibly helpful for general cleanup, especially if your algae issue is mixed with leftover fish food and decaying plant matter. They are phenomenal at breaking down detritus. However, they will absolutely not replace the foundational fixes of your tank. If you have excess nutrients, stagnant water flow, and lights that are blasting for 14 hours a day, no amount of shrimp in the world is going to save your tank. The algae will outpace them every single time.
Section 3. The reality check. Managing your ecosystem.
Let's walk through the actual management process that guarantees success here. Step 1. Identify the algae type so you know exactly what imbalance you are correcting. Step 2. Check your tank's maturity. Remember, grazers need consistent food sources, so dropping delicate Otocinclus into a sterile 1-week-old tank is going to end poorly. And step 3, proactively control your light and nutrients. Tougher algae require real environmental adjustments, not just more animals. This means putting your aquarium lights on a strict 6 to 8 hour timer. It means stepping up your routine water changes to remove excess organics, or adding fast-growing floating plants to actively outcompete the algae for those nitrates in the water column.
It's also vital to recognize the massive differences in these environments. Recommendations vary wildly based on whether you're running a freshwater or a marine setup. For instance, while a Nerite snail or an amano shrimp is an absolute staple in a freshwater planted tank, a saltwater reef tank relies on an entirely different biological crew. In a marine environment, you'd be looking at turbo snails, specialized hermit crabs, or even tangs to graze on the specific macroalgae that develop over there. Context is absolutely everything when building your crew. You just can't mix and match biomes. Let's break down the daily rules of engagement for keeping a pristine tank. First, do not overstock your aquarium. Overcrowding doesn't just stress your fish out, it literally pumps raw, concentrated biological fuel straight into the exact algae you're trying to starve. Second, feed intentionally. Broadcast feeding flakes that immediately get sucked into the filter? Yeah, that's asking for trouble. Use target feeding to ensure the fish actually consume what you put in. Provide adequate plant and vegetable options for your specialized grazers. And above all, maintain stable water parameters. Fluctuations cause stress, and stressed plants leak sugars, which, you guessed it, triggers even more algae.
So, the crucial point is this. Algae eaters work best as part of a comprehensive system. They are definitely not a standalone fix. Think of them as your dedicated assistants in daily tank maintenance, catching all those little things you miss. But at the end of the day, you are still the manager of that ecosystem. Diligent light control, disciplined feeding schedules, and smart, conservative stocking levels, those are entirely your responsibilities. When you do your job right, the cleanup crew just makes sure the tank looks totally flawless.
Section 4, your unique plan, pairing grazers with parameters. Okay, before you spend a single dime at the local fish store, slow down and run through this mental checklist. Ask yourself these 3 specific questions. First, what is your tank size? A 10-gallon nanotank physically cannot support a bristlenose pleco. I don't care how much algae is in there. Second, is it freshwater or saltwater? And third, exactly what kind of algae are you seeing? Is it dust on the glass, diatoms on the substrate, or stringy hair algae on the filters? Honestly, answering these questions gives you a highly precise, foolproof cleanup crew plan tailored directly to your own ecosystem's limitations.
I want to leave you with this final, very important question to reflect on. Look at the balance of your own ecosystem right now. Is your tank actually stable and ready to support a living, breathing cleanup crew? Or do you need to look in the mirror and clean up your own water parameters, lighting schedules, and heavy feeding habits first? True success in aquascaping always starts with the water. Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and good luck achieving that crystal clear glass.